when you get to August of 2020, Rudy Giuliani provided a copy of the laptop and its contents to the New York Post. And that's when the New York Post started reporting on these treasure trove of emails, correct?
Yeah, that was October 14th. So, and for the record, I never met Rudy. I never spoke with him. I told Bob Costello I wanted nobody to know who I was, because even in August of 2020, I was convinced that I could somehow get out of this without losing my business, without losing my place in the community, because I live 10 miles from Joe's house. I knew the wrath would be more than I could take. So I told Bob, I was like, nobody's to know who I am. So I was just referred to as Bob's guy until October 14th, when the New York Post ran the story, and my shop was outed, and then I'm the only one there, so people were able to put two and two together.
Here's a good question. So the New York Post article ran on the 14th of October, but right before 7 p.m. Eastern on the 13th, Hunter Biden's lawyer emails you.
Yeah, well, he called me first. He calls me, scares the shit out of me.
How did he get your information, I guess, is the question I have.
I have no idea. He calls me up about 10 minutes before closing, and he says, he goes, "Hey, Mike, I'm a lawyer. I represent Hunter Biden. He dropped off a laptop with you sometime in 2017. Do you still have it?" I basically told him what the FBI told me to tell him, which was stall him for, tell him it's in an offsite location, that'll take a day or two to retrieve it if I've even held on to it that long. And I was immediately to hang up and then call or text Agent Mike and say, "Hey, Hunter's looking for it." And then they would make arrangements to have it returned to me, which I always thought that was odd, because in my mind, this should be in an evidence locker somewhere outside of Langley or DC or something. So,
yeah. And looking at the timeline, I would imagine, because what happens, Dan, in most of these news stories is the night before they go to print, they ask you for comments, right?
Yeah, and they usually wait until late in the day so you don't have time to actually give a good comment.
Yes. And so that's probably when his lawyer reached out and said, "Oh, shit. Hey, Hunter, did you accidentally leave your laptop at this place?" Which will, again, lead me back to the incompetence question here. What did the FBI do for a year, and how did they not get a hold of the guy who is running for president of the United States?
I mean, the other part of it is that the only people who could have known that it was John Paul in his shop was the FBI. So the FBI either let the press know, or when Hunter Biden's attorney called the FBI to ask them about it, they let them know. There's no other way, unless they were surveilling somebody's communication somewhere illegally. There's no way they could have known this, just to be clear.
Yeah, and if it's a president's dummy son who's 10 miles from the house and just drops it off, no big deal. Again, I've worked in production for 20-something years. I've probably taken in, maybe 8 to 10 computers, laptops, drives over the years to try to recover information and everything else. Never have I had a problem, but also there was nothing that was ever on the drives that I would be concerned with, that it would actually mean anything or make a dent in anything. When this story did get released by the Post, did you have to shut down your business? Because knowing your location, everything that was going on at the time, and how heated the country was, I'm sure there was people that came out of the woodwork to attack you personally.
Oh, yeah. Well, it started instantaneously. I started getting voicemails left at the shop at I think as early as 7 in the morning. And the New York Post came out with a story at like 6:30 in the morning. So it didn't really take too long for people to figure it out and then start attacking me. Ironically, the efforts that social and mainstream media went to block the story actually helped me, because initially customers were coming in and they were asking, like, why is there dog shit on your window, or why are the tomatoes or eggs on the curb, and they just didn't know, because the story was being blocked from them. So it didn't. That lasted for like a week or two. By the third week, I was having people come into the shop, had to be removed a couple times by the police. I had a couple guys come in one night, and I had a little old lady at the counter, and they came in and they weren't carrying any computers. It was bad. And I finally, after 3 weeks, it was November 2nd, I closed the shop, and then I was on a plane by November 5th, and I got out of Dodge. I didn't go back. I was gone for about a year.
Yeah, because, looking at the timeline, this would have been roughly 3.5 weeks before the election itself. This certainly would have changed the election. Now that we know the information, in which we have over the last couple of weeks with the Twitter files being released, and that this indeed is a real laptop and a real story that everybody tried to suppress, do you look at what's going on and feel vindicated, or do you still feel hurtful for everything that happened to you? Because I know you got a multi-million-dollar defamation suit against Adam Schiff right now as well. How do you look back on everything?
Well, I obviously I feel a little bit of vindication. I mean, I felt like I knew this was a hell of a lot bigger than me by 9 o'clock in the morning on October 14th, when Twitter shut everything down and Facebook throttled it, and it was basically the story was being completely squashed, and then the narrative replaced that this was just Russian disinformation. And I thought that there's just no way this happens organically. They were ready for this. They were prepared. This was a switch that somebody flicked, and they all lockstep in line together to push this narrative. And I realize this is now a hell of a lot bigger than just me trying to get a laptop with a guy that's got criminality on it to the authorities. This is collusion between our intelligence community and then our mainstream and social media. And I think it was a couple of days later on October 28th when Zuckerberg was testifying about Section 230 and before Congress, and he admitted that the FBI, it was commonplace for them to warn them, and they had warned them at the end of the summer of a massive dump of documents that could affect before the election of foreign intelligence. And I'm thinking somebody had to be monitoring either my communications with Bob Costello when I reached out, or monitoring Rudy Giuliani's communications when Bob Costello was talking to Rudy about this. And as we have learned, the FBI was monitoring Rudy's iCloud account since that previous May. So it's all the pieces are coming together that make that people have been labeling me a conspiracy theorist or a perpetuator of these conspiracies for the past 2.5 years. And now it's like, great. Now it's real. And I'm not asking for an apology. I learned my lesson with Twitter that because I tried to sue Twitter for defamation, and now we're learning that how the level of deceit that they went to. Like, my case was just strictly there to punish me financially, to have my case thrown out with prejudice, so that I would have my legs cut off and I would never be able to fight a legal battle again. And they were right. Like, I would never have written my book if it wasn't for my complete destruction by Twitter. Because I figured my efforts to defend my actions and to hold those accountable in a court of law were gone. Now let me write a book, because that's my last chance to tell this story. And so I'm grateful for Twitter kind of handing me my ass because I would never have written a book. And I'm grateful for Elon to reveal the truth, because it's, again, I'm not probably ever going to get an apology, but it does feel good to know that I was right this whole time. And
sure, and you're right about the assessment of how everything went down too. I mean, if you read the if you read today's reporting from Schellenberger, Michael Schellenberger is a friend of the show, on the next day on the 14th, when the story published from the New York Post, it posted in the morning, and it took about 3 hours for Twitter and Facebook, etc., to start censoring the story, even in people's private messages. Like, they made it impossible to share the link in private messages. What we later discovered, both from Yoel Roth's deposition and from Zuckerberg on Rogan, is that FBI agent Elvis Chan specifically spent the previous few months assuring social media companies that there was impending Russian disinformation, and he emailed Twitter, Facebook, and other social media companies about 9 p.m. on 10/13, the night before the story published, and let them know that there was that story was coming out and that they should censor it. Right. So this is in the military and intelligence community, we call this battlefield preparation, right? So if it's a kinetic military operation, battlefield preparation usually means artillery and airstrikes to soften hard targets so we can send ground troops in. In information warfare, which is what this is, it means establishing certain quote unquote truths, right?
Yeah.
So if you say something enough times, if anybody in authority says something enough times, people assume that it's real, regardless of whether it's real or not.
Yep.
And then when you have FBI special agent in charge of tech on the West Coast and San Francisco telling you that this shit's fake, and then when you have 50 former intelligence community people sign a letter to that effect, then people really believed it. You can't tell me that didn't affect the outcome of an election.
Absolutely. And, the White House press secretary, McCaney, when she had posted the New York Post article, not only was her tweet deleted, but her account was blocked for 24 hours for posting the link to this article so that nobody could read it. And therefore saying essentially to the world, what she posted is misinformation, which we now know that it wasn't. Yes, this could have affected an election, something this close to it as well. Looking back through everything that Schellenberger posted here today, look, it's pretty obvious that not only does the laptop exist, but Jen Psaki also made announcements right after December 19th-ish, somewhere in there, saying that the laptop itself, the story, was Russian disinformation. Then you had Leslie Stahl interviewing President Trump about a week and a half after that, when he brought up the Hunter Biden laptop live on air with Leslie Stahl. She said, this never happened. I've talked to every source that I can, including all of our intels, and the laptop doesn't exist. Do you think when the new House gets in there in January, you will be called to testify on how this could have swayed the election going back to 2020? Because that's certainly what it looks like.
Well, I've told the different groups that I have been working with in the House that I would be willing to testify. Absolutely. I only have one condition, and that's I get to wear my kilt. And then I get to yell at Adam Schiff if possible. I don't think I need to testify. I've been working over the past 6 months with different groups from the House, different committees from the House, and ensuring that they have clean, fresh copies of the drive that haven't been circulating for the past 2 years, that haven't been touched since I made a copy of them and gave them to my father back in, October of 2019. Making sure things like like right now, the opposition, they're going to try to challenge the chain of custody. They can't disprove the laptop. They can't say the laptop's Russian. They can't say it's fake data. The CBS did a great forensics job after a copy that I gave, my attorney gave them. So
yeah, I watched that. I watched that, by the way, and they did confirm the validity and of the laptop, and they said this is real.
Mm-hmm. The only thing they can do now, which is what I feel that they're going to try to do, is they're going to try to challenge the chain of custody and make it look like this was all a Republican operation to trash the Bidens that got started in 2018 with Alba's computer that got left there and Roger Stone got it. If you look up Kevin Morris's mind map, it's very entertaining, but it does kind of give you an idea of where they would possibly try to challenge the chain of custody, because they can't make it go away. They can just make it look like a smear campaign.